Hey, what's up guys, it's Katsu here, and today we're going to be talking about mixing. So specifically, we're going to be talking about mixing in regards to mixing somebody else's music, something that you're not currently working on. So this is a fairly unique experience for me. I've only ever mixed, things that I'm working on, things that I'm writing, things that I already have a really sort of intimate familiarity with. So taking somebody else's music and trying to mix it and make it into this coherent thing is sort of new to me. So I figured why not document this, especially because the person who's asking me to do this is none other than my friend and co-host on the Katsu cast, Will, aka Furamoda. So earlier this week, Will messaged me and asked me, hey, would you mind mastering one of my songs? And I was like, sure, you know that my skills at mastering are absolute shit. I'll go ahead and work on your song. To which he responded, oh wait, never mind, I meant, would you mix one of my songs? So I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I figured since we write in different genres of music that this would be sort of a different experience for me. So he went ahead and he sent me the stems, and it wasn't until I loaded everything up in my DAW that I realized that this was going to be a little bit more different than I had anticipated. So I figured, why not unveil how badly I've bastardized his song to him during the show tomorrow? So yeah, I figured we'll make a video about it along the way, and you can judge all of my terrible mixing practices, because let's face it, my approach to mixing is really one based on conjecture and superstition, because I have no clue what the f I'm doing. So here we are in Will's song. So yeah, you can see the stems here are labeled Pagoda Kit, which is really the only thing that was clearly labeled right off the bat. And then group F1, group C1, group E1. Why? Will, why did you do this to me? So I went ahead, and once I got everything imported, I went ahead and just organized everything. So we've got our drums here. I've got my pads. He sent me a lead that was sort of split off into two channels. One is playing hard pan to the right, the other is hard pan to the left. So I've got those two here, and I went ahead and I bust those. I'm actually a really big fan of that lead. It reminds me of sort of like West Coast, sort of like old school hip hop vibes. And then of course we have our bass, and then our keys. The next thing I realized was I didn't know sort of where everything was as far as how everything was sitting in the stereo field and what the EQ spectrum looked like, if everything had already been properly mixed, or at least I say properly, if everything would have been mixed the way that I would approach mixing during my production process, which is to say that typically once I've got my song sort of arranged and everything is sort of where I need it, I'll go through and I'll add compressors and EQ just sort of along the way. But here I didn't know what was going on because this isn't my song. The next thing that I did was I went ahead and I dropped in a EQ spectrum, and I also dropped in a stereo panning tool so I can kind of see where everything was at. Really what I wanted to get a sense of was what the lower end of the spectrum was sort of looking like. So what I immediately noticed was that there wasn't a whole lot happening below the 40 hertz range. My immediate concern was that there wasn't going to be a whole lot of, weight in the bottom end in the mix. So I already knew that I was going to be relying a little bit more on the kick that was in that drum stem. I tend to mix my kicks pretty far forward in the mix anyways, working in more dance-oriented genres. That's sort of the bread and butter of that genre. So some of you other people who are more accustomed to more down-tempo styles of production are probably giving me really dirty looks right now. But let's keep going. So on the drums, just a little bit of reverb on that. I am using Voss plugins with a little bit of EQ and some stereo panning. I just widened it up a little bit. Same thing with the delay. This is a Voss plugin as well. This is Nasty Delay. And then I throw in some OTT just to sort of beef up the drums. Some of you more like, I guess, lo-fi people might be looking at me like I'm crazy. I don't know if this is a very common practice in this genre of music. I tried to keep it pretty, I wouldn't say subtle, but I didn't really push it the way that I would, on a more aggressive track. Strings, again, what I was looking for was making sure that there wasn't really anything happening down here to interfere with the bottom end of the mix. Now, my approach to compressing this, because I didn't know what Will had already done, was really just sort of very gentle compression for the most part. Really where I put in the most compression was in the keys because of this bit right here. Yeah, so the peak value jumps up by about, 4 decibels. So, and then the other thing that I went ahead and did on most of these layers is add a little bit of sidechain compression. I didn't push it as hard as I would in one of my, dance tracks, but I did just add it in there just to make sure, again, that I wasn't really interfering with the frequencies in the kick. With the pads, I added a very generous amount of reverb and delay. I say generous. It wasn't generous enough, so then I went and added one of my favorite sort of sound designy verbs, which is black hole. So you can hear there's, a pretty significant tail on that. And I really just wanted to sort of give it that atmosphere and that ambiance. And then some compression. And really that was just to raise the noise floor, because you can hear there's not really any gain reduction happening. I didn't want to, crunch it down too far. And then a little bit of sidechain compression just to give the pads a little bit of that motion. With my stereo panner, I just pushed them pretty far out to the left and right sides. For the lead, it was really just a matter of reverb and delay, and then I added some saturation in here just to give it a little more character. This is one of the Ableton presets, Hot Tubes, which was also my nickname in high school. And then a glue compressor to really just mend these two sounds together. Sidechain compression, and then a utility, which I'll get into that in a second. Let's go ahead and first just A/B these sounds. So with this utility, what I did was I automated the gain so that here it gets just a little bit louder. I say a little bit, what's the change? Okay, so like 4 decibels. So it gets marginally louder. And that's just because this part of the mix wasn't super busy and I felt like it was just a little bit too harsh. So I wanted to pull it back a little bit. So in the bass here, a little more of the same. I added some saturation and a little bit of compression and then sidechain compression. The sidechain compression on this is going to be a bit heavier. And then again, a utility just to adjust the gain for those less busy parts of the song. All right, last thing, keys. Not a whole lot happening here, sort of more of the same. Some saturation, a little bit of compression, and then a little bit of sidechain compression. I said a little bit of compression. Obviously, we've got some gain reduction happening here. And again, it's just to sort of even out those dynamics between those quieter parts and then that one part where it's like... So let's go ahead and take a listen to everything as a whole with all of these effects kicking. Alright, so right now what I'm thinking is I might back off on this OTT just a little bit. Alright, I say a little bit, I pretty much cut it in half from what it was, so... This is really, for me, about finding a balance between, not going too punchy on the drums, but also trying to maintain that presence with those drums in the mix, especially against that lead, and making sure that things don't get muddied up with the bass. Also, disclaimer, I know I shouldn't be mixing in headphones, but I don't have a set of proper monitors. I know, again, I never claimed to know what I'm doing, but these headphones are really all that I have. For those who are wondering, I am using a set of AKG K240's semi-open back headphones. So here's what we're looking at without any effects, just the way that he sent me these stems as is. Oh, if you want to listen to the podcast episode where I actually show this to Will, I'll leave a link in the description below, so you can experience firsthand how badly he's going to roast me for how poor of a job I did.